You're listening to the Farm Report Podcast with Jake and Corey, brought to you by Indians Baseball Insider and broadcast on the Smoke Signals Podcast Network. We're talking Tribe.
Listen, let's play ball. Shoot it around. Let's play ball, baby. Bang down the stones. Play ball.
Well, good day, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever and whenever you happen to be tuning in, we are glad to have you aboard. I'm Jake Dungan, Managing Editor for Indians Baseball Insider, and this is the Farm Report Podcast. Joining me as always is the Mahoney Valley Scrappers beat writer for IBI, Corey Christen. Corey, how was your week?
Oh, Jake, it was pretty good. It's a little sad with the minor league seasons coming to a close, but I'm moving along. At least I got football starting up, I got basketball starting up. So when one tree withers, another one blossoms up. So we just keep moving along. Baseball, as far as the Indians are concerned, we're heading into that part of the season where moves are going to be made, and we're going to be here a couple more episodes, and I'm glad to be back. And let's make these count while we're here.
Yeah, minor league season's come to an end. Akron had their last home game the other night, and are playing one win shy of the Eastern League Championship. They're playing against Trenton right now. They are the last team standing among the three Indians minor league clubs who made the playoffs this year, as Columbus and Lynchburg both were eliminated from the postseason. But before we get to that, I want to lead off and talk about the recent promotions to Cleveland. Some couple more September call-ups after Columbus season ended. Ryan Merritt and both promoted to Cleveland. Unfortunately, none of these promotions involved Deontay Diaz, which I can't figure out. But that's a subject for another show. But Ryan Merritt and Jesus Aguilar. Merritt's interesting to me though, because with the situation with Salazar, the flexor strain now, since he's on the DL, he's out 3 to 4 weeks. To bring him back during the playoffs, if all goes well, and to be able to start, he might have to go to the bullpen. So the Merritt move is interesting. At least, if we'll see if he has to make a spot start or not, depending on what Clevenger and Tomlin do. Clevenger still getting stretched out. Tomlin looked good the other night. So we'll see if Merritt actually needs to be used in the rotation, but at least he can pitch out of the bullpen and give you some length, which he has done earlier this year. Starting with Ryan Merritt, Corey, what are your thoughts?
I think the Indians need him. With the concerns over Salazar, and you talked about Tomlin and Clevenger, I don't want to say those two are question marks, but with what we've seen from them lately, it's that time of the season where your pitching has to be in gear. There's no question about it. It's now or never, and Merritt can provide the spark, I think. 11-8 and 24 starts. His walk rate's very good. His walks and hits rate is, he's got good numbers from AAA, and it's a little, you see some major league talent there, some former major leaguers, some cycling major leaguers, some other 40-man guys. So it's not like he's not pitching to anyone important down in Columbus. But I think, Merritt, and we've talked about it on previous podcasts, where Merritt's kind of a wild card because he can do either. He can go in the bullpen or he can start. And he has the ability to do that. And, it depends on how flexible the Indians want to keep, Clevenger and Tomlin. I think that, Salazar, the situation with him will play out. You're solid at least 1, 2, 3 in Kluber and Carrasco and Bauer for the time being. So having an asset like Ryan Merritt who can provide either short-term or long-term as far as innings are concerned, I think that's very key to have. Now, the question is, how effective can he be? The numbers would suggest he could be effective, and the scouting report would suggest he could be effective. But, this season we've seen some rough transitions from the minor leagues up into Cleveland. Mike Clevenger didn't exactly have the smoothest ship sailing, if you will, Sean Moramato had a rocky start against the Blue Jays, although that was a bit of a spot start. That was a bit of a bad situation for him. But if he can come up and be effective, then this is all moot because again, he has the ability to do that. I just want to know, with Salazar being a little on the fence with his health, I want to know if we're going to have this situated by the time the postseason rolls around, because it's now or ever. It's the time to get going, and we'll see how it plays out, I suppose.
Well, the thing that makes me a little more confident in Merritt as far as the transition goes is he's been up in the major leagues already this season, and he's had some success pitching out of the bullpen. He's had a few innings, pitch shutout ball, look pretty good. And being the type of pitcher he is, I mean, he's not going to come up and he's not going to blow guys away. So doesn't have the velocity. He doesn't have the lights out stuff like, say, Danny Salazar had when he first came up and was blowing guys away. Even for that matter, if you want to talk about bullpen arms. But Merritt is a pitch to contact guy. He relies on a pinpoint location. He can work in the strike zone very well, kind of similar to Josh Tomlin. And I've made comparisons to him being like a left-handed Josh Tomlin at his best. And I've seen what he can do in Akron. I mean, he had a no-hitter for Akron, albeit a 7-inning no-hitter during a doubleheader last season. So he is capable of pitching effectively. And I think being that kind of pitch-to-contact guy, while it's a risk of him coming out and being shelled by guys when he's working in the strike zone, there's also, I think, a better chance of success, because if you're away and then you're getting shelled, I don't know, it's harder to adjust, I think. Whereas if you're a pitch-to-contact guy, it's you are who you are, and if you're going to get shelled, that's just part of the game, because you're going to get shelled in the minors too, being that type of pitcher. So from time to time, but as long as you stick with the game plan, you can still be effective eventually at some point. So that's why I like Merritt.
I think it can work. Don't get me wrong. I want to know when he does come up, or when he gets going, rather, how Mickey Callaway is going to use him. How is he going to provide the adjustments or give advice to the adjustments that Merritt's going to have to make? And especially now in this time of year, he can't exactly come in. He's not going to come in versus, a bottom of the barrel team in the league. He's not going to see Oakland or any of these guys. He's going to see big talent in contenders and guys that are hungry. And not to say that he isn't hungry either, but he's got to be ready to go. And I think he can do it. If he mixes his pitches up, like you said, if he mixes the pitches up, if he works the plate, works both corners, he could certainly be effective. It's all in the hands of Mickey Callaway, and I can trust him to get Merritt going for sure.
All right, so the second part of this transaction from Columbus to Cleveland was kind of a surprise to me. I got to be honest with you, because we've talked all about Yandy Diaz and some of the other guys in Columbus. The guy who didn't really come up, and not to say he hasn't had a good season. I mean, he set a new career high in home runs with 92 RBIs, even though he did only hit 247, but still pretty impressive numbers. Jesus Aguilar, probably the reason why he didn't come up in a lot of discussion as far as September call-ups goes, because we've seen this before where he's gotten called up, but he doesn't get playing time. Now, I don't know if that's a personal thing with Terry Francona, if he did something that Francona didn't like and he doesn't trust him or what it is, but the thing is, the simple fact of the matter is he's not getting playing time when he gets called up. And so far, it's been a few days since he's gotten called up. He's appeared in a couple of games and only got one at bat. So, why they called him up, if they called him up now, are they going to give him that kind of ample audition time for possibly future playing time, either at first base or DH? Because, who knows what the Indians are going to do with Mike Napoli this offseason. They're going to try to re-sign him. Then there's Santana, who was that team option, which should be picked up, but of course you never know. So that's my question with Aguilar. One, are they going to play him? And two, are they going to be looking at him as a long-term option? Because his time is running out. I mean, young, but he's no spring chicken in minor league terms. He's just turned 26 years old not too long ago. So that's my feelings on Aguilar.
I just don't know about him. It's concerning because how many stops is he going to have before it's done? And I know there's technical talking options and all that, but it's not like he's going to. He could prove me wrong. But it's not like he's going to provide instant offense like a Yandy Diaz could. I mean, he had 247 down in Columbus this season, 30 home runs, 92 RBIs. That's nice to see. Don't get me wrong, but I think it might be a thing with Francona, whether he gets his playing time or not. Maybe it's an organization thing. Maybe there's something behind closed doors. I really don't know, Jake, as to why we're seeing Aguilar in Cleveland and not Yandy Diaz. Honestly, it just blows my mind as to why Diaz isn't getting the call here. I don't know if it's for first baseman depth. I don't think that should be the case. You're not going to bench Napoli or Santana, certainly, and you have options to play first base. And Yan Gomes coming back healthy, that's a question too. You need the depth. You have the depth in the infield that you could always use. Jose Ramirez is great as he's been all season. Do you need another third baseman there? You could play a little corner outfield. So to have the versatility of Yandy as opposed to Aguilar, I would rather go with that. But, can he provide a spark for the club now to carry this club into the postseason and instead of having Yandy up to get him some experience? And maybe there's logistics behind it. Maybe there's something behind closed doors that we don't know, but it's just kind of a head scratcher to me all in all.
The one thing I will say that, and I'm not a big Jesus Aguilar fan because I think that the options behind him and Nelly Rodriguez and Bobby Bradley are in line in terms of the future at first base for the Indians, at first base and DH. I think they provide more upside. But Aguilar has had a good season, and I was down from this year. The one thing I will say in his favor is, in compared to years past, his splits are a lot more even, particularly the home and away splits. He had a slugging percentage of 467 at home versus 404 on the road. So things that you could attribute to the park factor, with Huntington Park, of course, being a notorious hitter's park in AAA, and more susceptible to the long ball. Whereas this season, I look at his splits, they're a lot more even. As a matter of fact, I believe he's hit more home runs on the road than at home. Yes, 17 at home on the road and 13 at home, and his slugging percentage is actually higher on the road than it is at home this year. So that would tell me that the park factor is not of a factor as it was in previous years, and maybe he has more raw power than he's had before. So that's why I wonder, in this brief time before the end of the season, if he's going to get, maybe he turns some heads this season in Columbus, and maybe he'll finally get a little bit of an audition period before the Indians lose, or just let him wall away in the minors. Because keep in mind, he is no longer on the 6-year minor league clock now that he's had time in the majors. He's now on major league service time, so he could be in the system for a long time, barring the Indians cutting him or designating him. So that's what I think about Aguilar, and I'm wondering if he gets the audition time, if he will be able to produce, because he hasn't so far in the big leagues. We'll see if this raw power that he's shown in Columbus this year can finally translate to the big league level.
Yeah, I mean, the clock's ticking, time's running out. How much more investment in time can you put on one guy who he's made multiple stops at the big league level, and he's just flat out disappointed? I'll be blunt with it. He flat out disappoints when he comes up. Maybe he's put it together. Again, the 250 average is it is what it is with him, but that raw power that he showed in Columbus, yeah, you gotta hope he shows it, because if not, then you gotta start thinking about giving up on it.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, Nelly Rodriguez probably ready for AAA ball next season. Bobby Bradley moving up to AA. I think it's now or never time for Jesus Aguilar, now that he's up in Cleveland again for the September call-up. And if he doesn't do anything this year, or at least not uh, to please the Indians brass, then I think they really have to consider just cutting ties.
Sure. I just is it an issue with and I know he was never the top 10 prospect that everybody was waiting for, like a Bradley or maybe a Nelly Rodriguez to a degree, but where do you draw the line for a guy like him, where you have the depth coming up? You mentioned Nelly and you mentioned Bobby. Yeah, you have the depth. Where do you draw the line? It has to be now or never for him. You got to make that point right now.
Okay, so let's go ahead and move on now. Talk about some of the minor league playoffs that have gone on. And like I said, there's one team standing as we record this on Thursday night. They will be Rubber Ducks, who will be playing in Trenton. Series. They will go 3 games if necessary. Akron leads the series currently 2-0. Best of 5 series. So they need one more win to clinch the championship. And as Columbus and Lynchburg were both eliminated. Columbus in the first round of the playoff, Lynchburg in the finals of their league championship. Let's go ahead and start with Columbus, though. When we last convened, Columbus, I believe, was tied with Gwinnett at 1 game apiece. Gwinnett has since come back to take the series 3-1. And, I was looking at the game-by-game box scores. The offense was there from time to time. They played some close games. I think what killed them was I think it was game 3. Sean Mondo on the mound gave up 9 runs on 10 hits. No, 10 runs on 9 hits. That's what it was. So he did not have a good outing at all, and that put Gwinnett ahead 2-1, and I think that was just kind of the backbreaker for Columbus Clippers, who had a really good season. I mean, after getting the guys that like Zimmer and Frazier, at least before Frazier and Heller were traded from Akron, and they might have had a chance to win it all because they had really good talent as far as prospect talent, and Yandy Diaz, Bradley Zimmer, and those guys. Then they had some kind of veteran minor league talent and former major league talent like Joey Butler, Colin Cowgill, Michael Choice, Adam Moore, some of those veteran guys. I thought they had a pretty good mix to be able to go all the way there and repeat as Governor's Cup champions. But sadly, it was not to be. But a good effort for Columbus this season. Corey, what are your thoughts?
Look at the series that Columbus partaked in. 2 of the top really farm systems in baseball at the highest level of farm in Cleveland and Atlanta, and having those guys represent. Overall, a great season considering the talent that at one point the Columbus roster was loaded. At one point it was thin. It went through a revolving door of rehabs and injuries and all this stuff. All in all, I mean, you can't really be upset about losing in a semi like that, or losing in a series like that, rather. I think what we saw this season from the Columbus level, from AAA, was the validation of the depth that the Indians have developed in their starting pitching, in their starting rotation. Flacco, Mondo, Clevenger, Merritt, just to name a few. It's there. It's ready to go, too. And to think that Cleveland, they have that rotation locked up for a significant amount of time, to have at least 4 guys that are essentially major league ready now, if not next season, that's huge. That's huge to have. It gives you flexibility for rotation options at the big league level. It gives you flexibility for trading, for moving pieces. So the Indians really have developed that nice core of starting rotation. I think that was the big story in Columbus this year, was that coming together. I know Bradley Zimmer and Yandy Diaz got called up there, but I think overall that season in Columbus was validated by the success of that starting rotation. I mean, Merritt and Clevenger each won 11 games, and Clevenger only lost 1. So just to give you an example, and now those 2 are up in Cleveland. So the Indians organization over the past 8 to 10 years have done a really good job of retooling and loading up and loading a little more, and then just kind of developing layers of talent in the system, and now it's starting to kind of come together at once, at least for this rotation group. I think that was the big key for Columbus. I thought that was the big story for him.
I agree. That's a great point. That the starting pitching really came together for Columbus. I think that was the driving force. I mean, they had some good offensive performances too, like Aguilar we just mentioned, and Yandy Diaz, of course, and Eric Gonzalez, and among others. Pitching staff, not only the starting pitching staff, but that bullpen too, because the Indians had to dig into that Clippers bullpen too. Especially early in the year when the relievers in Cleveland were struggling, they had to go down and pick up some guys. Now we see some of the guys in Cleveland like Sean Armstrong, Cody Anderson's pitched well in the bullpen since moving from the rotation, and Austin Adams and other guys, Percy Garner. That whole pitching staff has been quite a nice development for the Clippers this season, and definitely bodes well for the Indians' future. Moving down to back to Akron in a second here, but moving down to Lynchburg, they were eliminated in the finals of the Carolina League, the Mills Cup, I believe it is. Myrtle Beach, who is a Cubs affiliate, they were pretty much not able to get anything done, get anything going, the Hillcats against Myrtle Beach. And I don't know if it was just fatigue or if they had guys called up like Greg Allen and some of their pitchers, Julian Merriweather, Cameron Hill. Some of those guys have all been called up. So maybe it was the partly depleted talent and then partly fatigue after a long season. But the offense pretty much was not able to get it going. They were scoring like 3 runs at most and getting shut out in the other games. And the pitching staff, unfortunately, was just not able to pick them up. So it was a quick exit in the finals for the Hillcats as they lost 3-1. Congratulations to Myrtle Beach Pelicans on the Carolina League Championship, and congrats to the Hillcats on a great season. It was one of the better seasons, not only in the Indian system, but all of minor league baseball.
I mean, you can't win them all, right? We just talked about Columbus, what came together in that starting rotation. And we talked all season about Lynchburg, about how there's a lot of, Tony writes these pieces, diamonds in the rough. There's a lot of those down there in Lynchburg, or at least there was up until not too long ago. Greg Allen, you mentioned Greg Allen, Mark Mathias, some of these guys getting the call up to play in Akron. It's been there all season. And even it's been there quite a few years in a row now. I mean, we've seen the talent sit down there. I mean, last year Clint Frazier, Bradley Zimmer were there. Now you look at the guys like Greg Allen who started there. You look at Tyler Krieger. You look at all this talent that moves into that area, and then some of those pitching arms really came up this year. I mean, Julian Merriweather had an outstanding season. You look at guys like David Spear, who's in the back end of that bullpen. Some other guys moving up and around from Lake County. So you had depth there for a while, and maybe the wheels kind of did fall off the bus at the end. But you look at what you had beginning the season up until now, and it's a whole different concept. It's a whole different layout, really, when you go 1 through 9 in that lineup. And give credit to Mark Budzinski for taking that team to the title series. Give him a lot of credit, because that's not easy when you're at that kind of middle level of the farm and you have guys coming and going virtually every day. That's difficult to do. Credit to Bud, credit to the guys that were there most, if not all, the season for getting them to that point. And, it's nothing to be disappointed about getting that championship series. That's certain.
Yeah, all that talent that was down there, and we've discussed this at length on this podcast throughout the season. And now some of the guys who were in Akron, who we discussed a lot, Greg Allen, Daniel Salters in Akron, then moving back down to Lynchburg, guys who were there all year, Yu Chang, Anthony Santander, Taylor Murphy, Francisco Mejia. It was really and Thomas Fano and Matt Esparza moved up later in the season. It really was a nice group of talent to have down there, and Sure, they came up short of winning it all, but they really came together this season. And like you said, Mark Budzinski, great job of not only to be able to move up to the next level in Akron, but keep these guys rallied together and make a run at the Carolina League Championship. So kudos to them for that. I want to move down now and talk about analysis of the captains and scrappers, since we didn't get to it last week. They unfortunately came up a little short. They were in the race till the end, but they ultimately came up short for the playoff run. And let's start with the captains, because we were up there a few weeks ago with our buddy Tyler Stotsky, and talking about all the turnover that roster has had since the beginning of the year. So just a quick kind of synopsis, Corey. Talk about the captain's season.
I mean, well, I saw a lot of talent from Mahoning Valley move up there too, and some of those guys produced at a very high level. You started off with Francisco Mejia earlier in the season, and the start of the hit streak. We all know the hit streak. Nathan Lucas, who's no longer with the organization, and Connor Maribel, their emergence as outfielders. Early on in the season, that's really what sparked this team. How about Willie Castro playing 123 games? Next highest amount, Anthony Miller, he played 102. So Castro getting plenty of playing time. Very young prospect. I believe he's only 20 years old now. So you have, I talked earlier about when you're in Akron and you're in Columbus, you got those layers of depth kind of developing. Well, you got the foundation down here in the lower levels in Lake County and Mahoning Valley. The outfield depth really showed this year. Where's the catching depth at now? I know Mejia is supposed to be the next guy to come up and take the reins from Jan Gomes, but next season when you have guys from Mahoning Valley come up, really after Mejia left, there wasn't anything there. There's kind of a void. I know Martin Cervenka caught 92 games, but there's still the talent was kind of low at that point when Mejia got called up. Now, that's not to say there weren't any bright spots. That starting rotation really started to come together towards the middle of the season. Brock Hartson, a 2.86 ERA. Matt Esparza, who was a strikeout machine, 109 of those, as compared to 22 walks. Matt Esparza's emergence as a starter really came out this season. Tristan McKenzie, we all know him, came up midseason and threw well for them. So the young talent that was drafted maybe in 14, some of these guys 15, and now 2016, this is where you kind of start those building blocks and that lower foundation that you talk about, those layers where, maybe a few years from now when the guys like Corey Kluber and Danny Salazar and those guys getting a little older, you have these guys ready to step in. Certainly you saw it, but it just wasn't enough to be put together for the type of season that you might think. I don't think the captains – when's the last time the captains made the playoffs? I don't think it's been I think it's been quite a while, hasn't it?
Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you. I know they won the Midwest League title, but I think that was like 5-10 years ago, something like that. So, yeah, it's been a little while since they've at least had a deep playoff run. I think they've been in the playoffs recently, but they haven't had a deep run.
Yeah, so the roster was gutted, and we know that. But, credit to the guys that were there. Willie Castro really stepped up this season. You saw John Carter kind of as an outfield prospect, start in Mahoning Valley, then come up there to kind of get going there. It just kind of got bad once Mejia, Krieger, once those guys got called up to the next level in Lynchburg. That's when it really kind of went downhill for them. And it's a shame to kind of consider that and to think about that, but it almost is what it is with those guys.
Yep, that's all part of the minor league scene, unfortunately, as we all know. But heading into next season, though, I don't know I don't care who else is going to be there. Tristan McKenzie is going to be worth the price of admission alone. Even when he's not pitching, just to see him in the dugout is going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, he was the star of the show when he was in Mahoning Valley, and you couldn't miss him. He's every bit of 6'7" listed. Can't miss him. He was the star of the show in Mahoning Valley. A 0.55 ERA. That's insane. The numbers are insane. 0.55 ERA in almost 50 innings pitched. We could go a whole podcast on him, but to see him come up and kind of get some experience at that next level, he'll probably start there. Which, again, if you're up in the Cleveland area or you're up in the East Lake area, go watch him pitch. He's so good. He's worth, like we said, price of admission alone.
And yeah, some of the guys, in seriousness, some of the other guys up there, you mentioned Jod Carter is going to be up there. Hopefully Kai Tom is able to come back healthy and he'll be there. So that'll be interesting to see. And then maybe some of the guys, some of the catch from this year's draft can make it up there, whether Logan Ice or some of the other guys from the draft. I know the Indians went catcher heavy this draft, so maybe we'll see some of those questions answered as far as the catching depth goes. The catching depth beyond Mejia, I should say, just to clarify. But since you brought up Mahoning Valley, let's go ahead and transition into a brief summary of their season. And you got to talk to Edwin Rodriguez. And I know they came up short, but what were your thoughts, and what did Edwin have to say about the season overall?
Well, they fell victim. The disadvantage of having a short season is you don't have time to turn anything around. They fell victim to that. They started off 5-17 through July 10th, and they finished the season a game under 500. So they brought it back, finishing 11 games over to end the season. This team had a lot of bright spots later on in the season, particularly with Andrew Kalika, who finished as the franchise's, if I should say that, the franchise's all-time leader in batting average, on-base percentage, and slugging percentage. So Andrew Kalika, 40 games, he turned in a 388 average and a 491 on base and a 568 slugging. So he had a fantastic season. Mitch Longo, as another outfield prospect, really turned in a solid outing, and he played a limited time. He had 307 in 38 games, so he played about half the season. Luke Wakamatsu was a guy who we all know who he is. We all know kind of his story about how the Indians took a late flyer on him in last year's draft, and he ended up signing, which was kind of a surprise. He went down in July with an injury, and he only played 17 games this year, so maybe next season a headline would be to watch that. But you brought up the catchers, and that's an interesting point coming up to Lake County next season. Logan Ice played 39 games and only hit a .198 in Mahoning Valley. So who's to say he might start there next season, try to bring that average up before they groom him for the next level. Michael Tinsley also went down with an injury after coming in from college. The two big stories as far as that lineup in Mahoning Valley were the emergence of Gabriel Mejia and Todd Isaacs. Mejia was one of the top in the league in batting average at 322, in hits. I think he was leading. He led the New York Penn League in hits with 85, and that's in 65 games played. So imagine that real quick, if you will, if you could tailor that along with production and more games. He had 16 RBIs, which he hit leadoff every day. You're not going to expect RBIs from a guy like that. 28 steals in 37 chances, certainly a good number there. Todd Isaacs, though, he had limited time, but he was one of my favorites to talk to because he always had the attitude for the game. And Edwin Rodriguez, he even alluded to Isaacs as almost their MVP. He really put the work in. On days he didn't play, Edwin made a note that Isaacs would be in the dugout with a notebook taking notes. He would be studying opposing pitchers. He would study his teammates, how they went about their processes and how they would go about hitting opposing pitchers in certain situations. Isaacs became a student of the game this year. He was a 19th round pick last year in 15. He plays all three outfield positions, mainly corners. So he's versatile in that regard. But he really stepped up this season. He hit 6 home runs this season. I think he only hit 1 last year in the Arizona League. So the power came around for him. He stole a few bases. He stole 14 bases and 16 chances. He had a 384 on base. And again, that's in limited time. So Isaacs will be a storyline to watch probably in Lake County next year. A disappointment to me, though, Jake, was Alexis Pantoja. Pantoja was a 9th round pick back in 2014. This his second season in Mahoning Valley, and he really just couldn't get it going at the plate. I mean, he hit 197, 23 RBIs in 57 games played. So it's not like he didn't have chances. The defense has been there for him, but the hit tool always had to come around. So he's a guy maybe to watch for improvement next season. We talked about Tristan McKenzie and his dominance in Mahoning Valley. Juan Hillman, 3-4, 4.43 RA. So not great there, but overall turned in. He looked good some days and he looked bad some days. The story in the pitching staff, Aaron Savali and Shane Bieber, the third and fourth round picks from this season, those two combined for an 0-2 record in about 80 innings or so. Savali's ERA was at 1.67 in 37 and 2/3 innings. He only gave up 7 earned runs all season. And Shane Bieber, ERA of 0.38 in 24 innings. He only gave up 1 earned run all season. So those two guys coming out of the draft looked really solid. And I know they had limited time, but to have those two guys who you spent a lot on to perform the way they did, those are the two guys that really stuck out to me. Michael Lekowitz out of the bullpen, 6-0, 1.74 ERA in 41 innings. Very good season for him, allowing 8 earned runs in those 41 in the third innings. So there were bright spots certainly later on in the season for Mahoning Valley. But overall, as far as a record and a playoff contention, they just fell victim to their slow start. And Edwin Rodriguez, he knew that. He knew that it was a process to come back from such a bad start. And, he had a really tough job in keeping those guys to stay positive. You got to give him credit for turning that bad season, that start around. So overall, if you take anything out from July 10th, before July 10th, really it was a good season for them, even though the record may not show for it.
Yeah, I like seeing that even though they came up short, that they were able to get that turned around, because it really was a miserable start to the season for them. And I'm glad they were able to get it turned around, and that just tells you how Edmund was able to get the boys rallied together. So like you mentioned before, that's a good fit for that level, and I hope he's able to come back next year, because I think he's a good mentor for these young players coming up. So finally, let's talk about Akron. 1 win shy of another Eastern League title. A number of them. I can't think of how many off the top of my head. I want to say like 4 or 5, something like that. So the last one was in 2012, also against the Trenton Thunder. So this is kind of a rematch. And Akron takes the first 2 games at home. Eric Haas played the hero, surprisingly, and he got the walk-off RBI single to get the win over Altoona, put them in the championship series, and then first game of the championship series, he hit a go-ahead grand slam, and that's interesting because he's typically a better hitter on the road than at home this year. I mean, blitz this year during the regular season, he was like around 270 on the road and then below 200 at home. So kind of some odd splits there. I mean, Akron's not a hitter-friendly park by any means, but that just to be that drastic was kind of odd. So get those hero hits in the playoffs. And I talking to him, he said that this is basically just free baseball and there's no pressure. So I like that attitude, especially in the playoffs. Just think of it as free baseball, and you're just out there to have fun. That's basically what he's doing. That's why he's come through. And I think that's what a lot of these guys were doing. Because Akron, we talked about, had that great run coming back from below 500 at the start of August and pretty much out of the playoff conversation, to coming back all the way to take the division title on the last game of the season. And then now they're 1 win shy of the championship. So very impressed with these guys and what they've been able to do over the last month and what they've been able to do so far in the playoffs. And hope they are able to get that final win and clinch the title.
Yeah, you know what? You make a good point about that, because in the minor leagues, some of these players are pressured to accelerate their own development, and they're pressured to get out there, and they're essentially fighting for a job. Once the postseason comes around, it kind of changes from that feeling to, hey, let's win a title. And that's it's quite a drastic change, but you mentioned Haas and others. Some of those just handled it well. In Mahoning Valley, for their case, just speaking from seeing them and being around them, being so far down early on and with limited time to make it up, I think that kind of took pressure off of them. And I know, losing is not fun, and there always is going to be trouble when you lose. But I think Mahoning Valley, and give Edwin Rodriguez credit here, and to your point, I hope he is there again next season, because especially with some of these players returning. I think they need that continuity in their careers. I think they need to have a guy around there again, essentially to continue a program. Mahoning Valley, their season started off slow and then they turned it around because I think they took the pressure off of them and they realized they could just go out and play baseball. And if they win, then they get on a roll. And they saw that and it came to fruition. They finished the game under 500. With the playoffs around here with Akron now, they're still in it. You hope for the best. And I think the environment will change if it hasn't already from that. I'm competing versus my own teammate for a job to now it's, hey, let's work together to win this thing.
I like that point, and that's kind of a aspect that goes by the wayside with a lot of casual fans on how the minor leagues really work. It's not about, there's the team element and managers and coaches try to keep the team together and rally together. But at the same time, especially in the upper levels, AA, AAA especially, it's a competition, although not really a unfriendly competition. It is a competition with the guys within the same team who are competing for spots and competing for their development. I didn't even realize that personally until I got into the minor leagues and working in especially like AA, AAA levels, like I said, and seeing what the actual environment is like that you don't associate with baseball because you think that baseball is the same at every level. Each team is playing to compete for a ring. Now that may be true in some respects, but again, it all starts with development, and development can spur competition.
It sure can, and to kind of build upon that, look at guys like when Clint Frazier was here. Look at him and Bradley Zimmer. They told us when we did our Akron remote, basically those two were great friends, and even though they're essentially at the time they were the top two prospects in the organization, they still were buddies. They still had their own little friendly powwow in their competition. But at the same time, they knew that they were essentially competing with each other. And now I'm not trying to insinuate that Clint Frazier getting traded means he lost the competition. That's just the organization. That's business. But those two guys probably made each other better on the field because they were on the field together. Maybe some of these guys, and again, we don't know exactly what happens behind closed doors, and you and I can't speak for anything that happens down in Lynchburg or in Lake County or Columbus, but, I saw, at least in Mahoning Valley, some of the Latin players especially came together and became friends, and they hung out together, and they ate dinner by their lockers after the games together, and they did all this stuff together. So you build the chemistry, you build competition, a friendly competition at that. And I think you have a really, and it translates with the talent that the Indians brought in the system. You have a really healthy farm system all throughout. And we certainly saw that. 3 out of the 5 teams making playoffs, one of them, or rather 2 of them, making the championship series. So overall, nothing to be disappointed about for sure, as far as we are concerned, at least.
All right. So we are going to go ahead and wrap things up for tonight. I think we are only going to have one more of these weekly shows. We'll provide an update on what happens in the Eastern League Championship Series with Akron. Then we'll kind of put the finishing touches on the minor league season in general, give our final analysis and breakdowns. And then we'll be moving on to kind of a semi-regular format, whether it's once a month or whenever there is relevant minor league news to talk about concerning the Indians farm system or Indians top prospect. We'll be on the air to talk about it. As I mentioned before, I'll be heading down to Arizona next month, less than a month away now. I just got word that my Arizona Fall League credentials are in the mail, so excited about that. Excited to be doing that league and some Fall League because there'll be a lot of Indians guys down there for sure. And we'll be doing some podcasts. I'll be getting some interviews, doing some stuff. We'll have like a semi-live remote podcast down from Arizona. And Corey, you'll be holding down the fort up here.
Yeah, I will. And, maybe once you're down in Arizona, maybe we'll get something going, another podcast, get some updates from Arizona. Maybe that's a possibility, Jake.
Absolutely, and be sure to follow us on Twitter for all the updates on that. I'm at Jake D Baseball. Corey's at CD Kristen. So that's going to do it for us tonight. For Corey Kristen and the Farm Report Podcast, I'm Jake Dungan, and we say to you, have a good one.